I think it is now working. Okay, everybody, stand by for broadcast. I had a last minute glitch, as happens every time. And it happened again, so let me just make sure that this is post. I think it says I'm offline, so Patreons, I don't know if this is going to work. No, that's not it. Okay. Hello everybody. Patreons, I'm sorry. Everything was set up 3 hours ago and I came in to do a little quick test and it worked. And I hit the go button and it fell apart, which is kind of normal. So I tried really hard to, if you give me just a moment, I mean, the point of this is to actually help get Patreons on board. Next, let's try this. Publish now. Okay, maybe that'll work. Hello everybody. Sorry, I get so frustrated with these live shows because they are tough. Giovanni in Brazil, hello. You're always there and you always bring a smile to my face when I see you. All right, we're going to have some fun tonight. I'm going to talk about four-wheel drives. I have a pile of books here. These are some of the books that I have published, and each one has a little story behind them. But we're going to talk about four-wheel drives. Actually, going to talk about your favorite four-wheel drive more than my favorite four-wheel drive. And before we get going, I actually want to share with you a new vehicle that's come on to the market now, which is really quite interesting. It's this guy here. It's called the. I'm supposed to be able to get a. Am I going to get a, there? Is that going to work? Oh, wow. Okay, just, it's the, come on. Yes, there you are there. All right. Can you see that? You should be able to see that. It's, of course, the GVM, Great Wall Motors, Tank 300. And it looks like an interesting vehicle. If I look at the way it looks like a cross between a 2004 345 baby Jeep Cherokee and a Scorpio, the Mahindra Scorpio. So if that's because the Chinese do have a habit of copying other designs, that they haven't come up with any original designs at all. It looks like they've gone for the Scorpio because they thought it was cool. Yeah, I wouldn't say so. But if you look at it, I think it's very ugly. But it's an interesting vehicle. I mean, if you look at the interior, is look at the plastics there. They look terrible, don't they? But it is a hybrid, and its wheels are obviously too small, which is not necessarily a bad thing because, well, it means you can put bigger ones in the wheel arches. So that's, so and first you think it looks ridiculous, and I have a closer look, it's okay. It might be actually quite okay. And they've brought colours, very boring colours. Very, 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 very uninteresting colours. If you want to get good colours, go and see the Suzuki Jimny. They are interesting colours. And some of the new Toyota Prado colours. But if you look at the specifications, actually quite interesting. It hasn't got a low-range gearbox. And I would normally say, if you were looking at a vehicle and you'd say, oh, it's an off-road vehicle because they say it looks tough and all that kind of thing, yeah, whatever. But it has to have low-range gearing and it has to have reasonable clearance. And that seems to have okay clearance, and but no low-range gearing. But it has a 9-speed automatic gearbox. And it's a hybrid. So what does that mean? I don't believe that you can automatically assume that it's rubbish off-road just because it hasn't got a low-range road transfer gearbox. Because it's got 9-speed gearbox. So you can only tell. I mean, so many of these vehicles, as you know, when I rear a vehicle to a point without actually driving it. Because what does the driving do? The driving actually tells you a little bit more about the ride and things like this, and allows you to get a little bit closer, but you can judge a vehicle to a point about what it is and what it's likely to do. This is a difficult one because of that gearbox question. You'd have to drive it to find out if it was any good. I'm going to quickly go through a few questions that were posted on my. So Patreons, please go ahead and send me your questions. I'll obviously get to you first. And you guys post on YouTube. SuperChat is open. If you would like to contribute a bit to the channel, I'll get to your questions first. Obviously, they're automatically highlighted on my laptop here. So, but what I am going to do is I'm going to quickly look at some of the comments that were posted on the announcement I made about this this video and my thoughts about them. Does that sound nice to you? I'm hoping it's nice to you. All right, Pitscower. I've actually been promised a Pitscower, and I'm planning trips for next year. And one of the things I was thinking about doing is doing a Scotland trip that I wanted to do when I was actually living in the UK and couldn't actually do it. But I've been offered a Pitscower for that trip. I would love the idea of getting a Pitscower for. It's small, compact, slow. And it's a military vehicle, and I think probably with so much character that driving it will just be plain fun. It's a bit similar to the way I feel about Unimogs, is that they're oversized, they're ridiculous, they're unbelievably capable off-road. When it comes to an overland tourer, complete overkill, unless you were doing something so extreme that you needed those portal axles and those enormous wheels and things. But actually they're not that good at overlanding because of the, well, in Australia, so some countries are quite good, but in Australia not that good because they're wider than the tracks normally left by Land Cruisers and Hiluxes, which is the average width track found in Australia. So the wheels run in the edges and tend to pick up a lot of punctures. Pitscower is one of those vehicles that I've had. Whenever I see them, I get what's one of those warm fuzzy vehicles. They're just beautiful in their simplicity and quirkiness. I would love to get a chance to drive one. The M13A1. I'm not sure what vehicle that is. Gen 2 Touareg with off-road package. So the Touareg is a very, very complicated electronic vehicle, electronic suspension, and I've never been a big fan of electronic suspension because when it fails, it's incredibly difficult to repair in the bush, and the kind of trips we sometimes do, these vehicles take a real beating. Even my latest trip that I did, the solo trip that I did, was and I had a minor spring problem that I could fix, but the fact is that I could fix it, and it was very simple for me to fix. And trippies are as strong as you can get, and still yet I had a few issues. So I just like I like a vehicle that's a little simple, and I am suspicious of vehicles that have electronic, particularly air suspensions. While the ride is amazing, I've driven. I had a lone Land Rover Defender, the Discovery 4. In my opinion, when they still made a very good decision, it was quite electronic, and now that they've gone too far with the electronics, but the ride was brilliant, and the ergonomics of that Discovery 4 was brilliant, and I proved that it was incredibly capable off-road. I didn't trust that suspension. It's a trusting, really. Early model Hiluxes, that they were, of course, Top Gear proved it. That was an early model Hilux with the solid axles. I can tell you a story now about a Hilux. Since we're talking about all these books and things. Only time I nearly I almost had a really severe accident off-road. I was in a Hilux. It was in the Western Cape. It was loaned to me by Toyota, and we were doing our trails book. In fact, we were doing that trails book. We were doing a trail called Montague. I think it was. Let me just. I'm going to just quickly scan the book to see if I can find a picture of the Montague Trail in this book. It was a black and white book, all right, but it had some color plates in it, and these. We had to print these in numbers of 5,000 plus, otherwise they were not. It wasn't worth doing. So it was quite a big investment. But actually, these books were bestsellers. I don't have a picture of the Hilux. Very steep, very, very steep, and I knew that getting over the top with that I don't think it was a 2.7 engine. I think it might have been the 2.4 motor, 4-cylinder petrol, and I got right to the top, but I didn't quite get over. So I got it right all the way up, and as I stopped, and of course it has rear drum brakes, and as I stopped, I put my foot on the brakes. I banged it straight into reverse. As the thing came to a stop, bing, Grace, foot off the clutch. It started going backwards. And I'm thinking, I'm in reverse, my foot's off the clutch. What is going on? And it started accelerating backwards. And I've now got my foot hard on the brakes, as hard as I can. Of course, those old drum brakes, the back, don't work in reverse well at all. So all my braking effort is on the front wheels. And the front wheels they have very little traction because the car's sitting at this angle. And it starts going. And I opened the door because I couldn't stop it. And I remember as I jumped from the car, as I was about to jump to the car, I yanked on the handbrake and had one of these T handbrakes, which of course does work on the back wheels. And the thing like this. So it stopped. My heart in my chest, recomposed myself, didn't jump out of the vehicle. Engine was idling. It was in reverse and the clutch was out. What? Didn't go into reverse. The lever actually went all the way. It went all the way into reverse, but it didn't engage reverse. And I asked some Toyota people about it afterwards, and they said, it's a known fault. It's a known fault. It can happen occasionally. They didn't give me any more information than that. I can't remember that they gave me more information than that. But that was a close call. That was a very, very close call. I then put it into, with the handbrake on, put it into reverse and made sure, and now, okay, I could feel the engine now. So I then released my handbrake and went down on reverse and reversed all the way down under the gearing, which was of course fine, which was what I was trying to do in the first place. That would have been in 1995. Yes, 5. My youngest daughter, Stephanie, was with us. Beautiful trails in Western Cape, South Africa. Right. How are you guys doing there? You can hear me? Lots of comments. Fantastic, guys. Fantastic. All right. I hear you. Yes. Okay. Hi from South Africa, lots of people from South Africa. I did it for you guys. I did it for you guys in South Africa and for Europe, because when I do it on my normal Sunday morning, you still fuss on die slaap. And so I thought, well, if I do it Friday night, then you get a chance to actually watch the live show. I actually get more current viewers if I do it on the Sunday morning, but I thought, 1 month on the Sunday morning, next month, give everybody a chance. That's my idea anyway. Land Cruiser 24 valve 80 series. The 24 valve, that's the 1HDT motor. The 4.2 multi-valve Toyota turbo diesel. It was first introduced in the last year or two of 80 series production, and of course most were fitted to 100 series and a small number of troop carriers with the different front axle, same front axle. It had, in other words, had leaf springs. Did it have leaf springs on the front? Did it have leaf springs on the front? Actually, maybe not. It didn't. It had coil springs in the front. It was the early coil springs front, leaf springs back, but it didn't have the widened nose. It had the same axle track width front and back before the V8 front was introduced in 2007, and that is the best engine in troop carrier. I've never owned an 80 series. As you know, I've owned two 100 series, but they were the 105. And I think the 105 is best vehicle Toyota ever made, but they didn't put it with that multi-valve 4.2 engine. So you had to deal with the other engines. But as a chassis combined body, brilliant. I loved both of mine. Loved them. And I have a quick look at Patreons. I have to refresh the page to see if any of the Patreons are. Elliot says his favorite four-wheel drive is a Chevy Colorado, Isuzu KB Holden Colorado in Australia. Yeah, I know the car. It's an inline 5-cylinder, which makes it a little unique in that as well. I like it. I first found it via your 2017 book and read John Basham's 2012 four-wheel drive book for yours, but I liked yours better. You hear that? John Basham's, if you're watching. Land Cruiser 79, Henriette Pinar. You're obviously from South Africa. Land Cruiser 79, my house on wheels for overlanding. Not so interested in tough 4x4 tracks, but I want to be able to get to nice off-road destinations. 79 is a great car. I have a very, very mixed opinions about the 70 series, the current 70 series. I've owned all of them, and obviously the Troopy's better. And it's fine if you disagree with me. Bill is planning on buying an Ineos Grenadier. Okay, Ineos Grenadier. I have got one for a review. A very nice chap contacted me after my appeal and said, would you like one? I'm in WA, actually not very far from me. Would you like one? And so that's in the process now, but I'm planning to film that early November for broadcast in sometime during the month of November. I wanted to get I'm still very excited about the car. I know I give them a hard time. I give everybody a hard time. I'm not going to just say cliched wonderful things about the car, but I am really interested in it. I just think it should have been cheaper. As you probably all know, I think it could have been cheaper and therefore more appealing to more people. But I want to see now, we've established that, I want to see now what kind of value it is. Is it good value or not? That's really my goal. What are your thoughts of Emirates to Saudi Arabia through the empty quarter desert? There's lots of information about people that have done it and are doing that. I would be the wrong person to ask about that. If I were you, I would go and speak to Sean Mayer from Expedition Extreme. I've done a number of trips with him through the Emirates and Oman, and he knows the area very, very well. Lazy Overlander agrees with me. Land Cruiser 105. You explored a lot of... This is Rob. Would you consider publishing a book to your Patreons with all your favorite campsites and tracks? Rob, in short, no. And I'll tell you why. There is so much brilliant information out there. I haven't seen the best tracks. I don't consider myself an expert on exploring WA. I don't, even though I've been here 7 years. I don't, because other people do so much more of it and have so much. I wish I had their knowledge. I still feel like a visitor. Southern Africa is different. I did that for 25, 30 years. And so no, it's a nice idea. But if you want to see where I've been, go on to forexoverland.com / I think it's / live. But if you go onto the website and you'll see a live, and you can actually see all my tracks that I have recorded. There must be 15 or so there since 2018, all over the world. I take my digital tracker and you can go and see exactly where I've been on that. You can zoom right up and actually see the points where I camped. So all of that information is actually available. Right, I'm going to start getting them. Gwynnie is the other side of the house. It's 10:20 p.m. here in Perth. A warm, it feels like a summer evening. Summer's kind of arrived a little early this year in Perth. Thank you for your great work. Appreciate it, Terry. Big hello from my old hometown. What are you talking about, old hometown? I consider a couple of places in England my old hometown, really old. Somerset West is an old hometown. So I'm assuming that you are saying old hometown from Somerset West. A lovely little suburb, about 40 minutes east of the city of Cape Town. Hello from Brazil. My favorite 4x4 is the Suzuki Jimny. Brilliant. The Jimny is brilliant. Those of you who have seen my show, because it's so simple, not flashy. The only the only criticism I had of the Jimny was the surface on the load bay was very slippery, hard plastic. So everything you put in there like a cool box, and it just flies around everywhere. That was about the only, and the fuel tank is too small. That's it. That was my only criticism. We had a rooftop tent on that little car, and it's still standard wheels and tires, and it still handled it and handled well. It was comfortable. Gwen and I did a trip in New Zealand. If you want to see it, it's on my channel. We did a review of the Jimny, and then we did North Island in a Land Rover Defender, and South Island in a little Jimny. Absolutely lovely car. Absolutely lovely, lovely car. All right, greetings from the Canary Islands. My favorite 4x4, of course, is my HJ60, 24 volt. That's interesting. Was it a factory 24 volt, or was it made for military use? Some vehicle manufacturers like Land Rover made a 24 volt version. I think G-Wagon did too, for military. So 60 series. I have driven a 60 series, but not much. It was a beach event. I remember the owner got horribly stuck on the beach. We pulled him out. He had a brown 60 series, which he absolutely adored. Again, very, 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 very practical. Hello from Florida. American 100 series Land Cruiser. So your 100 series Land Cruiser would have had the 5.7 V8 gas guzzling monster engine in it. It was an ordinary engine. Yeah, it's fine, but it's very heavy on fuel. In America, not that powerful, reasonable. But the 4.2 multi-valve diesel was just you lose like 50%. You had about as much power, not quite as much, but it was actually easier to drive. Actually, just as nice to drive as the V8, and half the amount of fuel. Why do the Defender enthusiasts prefer TDI over the later engines? So the later engines were basically the TDI 5 or the TD5, the 5-cylinder, because The 5-cylinder which had more power. It was still a very rough engine. It was maybe a little smoother, kinder on the ears and the vibration, etc., than the TD. The TD1 was terrible. The TD200 was really good. The TD300 was really good. The TD5 was good, but it had issues, but they could be sorted. Were people that knew. And then there was the Ford, and I've always claimed that Ford sold Land Rover reject engines because the reliability of those engines in the Puma engines, the reliability was so poor with those engines. Why? It's a Ford engine. It's a good engine. Ford makes a very good engine. Why were the Puma engines so unreliable? Was it the peripheral equipment like water pumps and other stuff that runs the engine or supports the engine that caused the failures? I don't know. Terrible reputation for reliability, the Puma. Why? Hey, I don't know. So the TDI, reliability, that's why. Reliability. Because you've already got a car that's a bit unreliable. Needs a lot of loving care to keep going. And they will keep going and they will run well, but they do need TLC. The TD200 and TD3 engine needs less efforts. The Hilux, thoughts on the Hilux GR, the new Hilux. Yeah, the Hilux, Toyota is trying to catch up with Ford in terms of styling. I think they're doing quite well. With the GR does really look quite good. I don't have any strong opinions about any of the pickups. If I had to buy a pickup, I'd probably buy a Toyota Hilux. But I probably wouldn't buy a Ford reliability. I'd probably buy an Isuzu. Isuzu and Toyota would be my two top. But to be honest with you, I haven't really thought about it in any great. And if I was forced to buy one, I'd do a lot more homework and do a lot more test driving, because the Toyota doesn't have as good a ride as probably even the it's similar to the Isuzu, because I have driven the Isuzu. It's very similar to the Isuzu. I wouldn't buy an Amarok. Patrol Y61 turbo diesel 42, the 4.2 turbo diesel. The Patrol's built as strong as just about any. It's strong like a G-Wagon. Those two are kind of a little bit stronger than almost anything else built. And I'd say stronger, I'm talking about drivetrain. I'm talking about axle linkages, the fact that it has coil springs, solid axles, even as she has the rear axle has a 4-point location of the rear axle. So you actually have two sets of radius arms, which does reduce axle travel, but makes the vehicle far better on very rough ground, corrugations and things like that. The axle doesn't tramp. You don't get axle tramp at all on it. It keeps the vehicle very stable. And if you look at the axle drive shafts and things like that, strong as anything, which makes them very, very good cars. And they were never expensive. That's what made them so good. They were they kind of ticked every box, and they weren't expensive. The basic Patrol was not an expensive car, and yet it was far more comfortable than, say, Land Rover Defender, the old Defender. Far more comfortable than the Defender. It was really quite comfortable. I felt the ride was very brittle with the Patrol. I drove one on several occasions. Drove it, and I found the ride very. But the interesting thing is that you can say, okay, my criticism of Patrol was its standard ride was pretty awful and very easy to fix with a good aftermarket spring set, and actually you could improve it, not spending too much money on it. Whereas the Land Cruiser built at the same time, the Land Cruiser 100 or 80 series, had a far better ride. But take the 105, for example. The 105s that we got in South Africa, we didn't get the Workmate that you got in Australia. The 105s there had a spare wheel underneath the load bay at the back, but they had a 45, I think it was 45 litre sub-tank above it. So the spare wheel hung down. So if you wanted to go overlanding or even moderate off-road, you had to find somewhere to put that spare wheel. It was hopeless. It was so close to the ground. You'd have rocks and everything just destroying the spare wheel. So there was a car that came out of the factory and its ride was far better than petrol. But you had to do something about the ride because you didn't have enough clearance. So you would still have to spend the money to get the ride right, which you could do. And then you would have reasonable clearance underneath that spare wheel, but you would want to do something about that spare wheel location, where, of course, the petrol, it was on the back and it wasn't a problem. All of these cars have this kind of... They're all compromised. Even the best ones are compromised, Good morning from Salt Lake City, Utah. Yes, Kev is off-road and working hard. Yes, it is. I mentioned that I try to do these different lives so everybody around the world can get a chance. All right. Do I have any thoughts on the best OG Defender engine? I mentioned earlier, I talked about TDI, TD5 or Puma earlier, so I won't do that again. I work for Jaguar Land Rover back here in the UK, and you mentioned to my colleagues we need to do something about the handbrake issue if we want to stay relevant for the adventure community. I'm glad you did that. I don't believe the Defender is back to Defender, because it's just one of those things that just attracts so much attention. Somebody says, "Oh, Andrew, I saw some Defenders in Moremi, and they were pulling these heavy caravans and everything, and they were doing brilliantly, so I think you're wrong." It was polite, and I replied and said, "What am I wrong about?" I said the Defender's a fantastic vehicle in terms of performance. Off-road ability is really respectable. I don't like the fact that it's got those big wheels, but you can kind of do something about it. Not that easily, but you can. But the point is that actually, as the vehicle stands now, it's amazing. But it's ruined by the programming. And it could so easily be fixed. Honestly, I think it's 90% programming that could sort that car. And if you want to keep all of that fancy stuff, fine. But then you make a Trailmaster version where you say, I'm taking out some of this electronic puffery and I'm making it for the adventure traveler, and I'm taking out all of this nonsense. And hopefully you'll also put just coil springs in it instead of that electronic suspension, but simplify the electrics. So if somebody does have a fault, it can be sorted. There is, for example, Land Cruiser 200s that are supplied to NGOs around the world. Now, I was told this, and I actually haven't seen it in my own eyes, but I was told that they are fitted with a large red button on the dashboard. And what that red button is, it's because the engine is electronically controlled. It has to be for emissions and things like that, and we understand that. None of the rest of the car is electronically controlled, but there are electronic feeds to gearbox and things like this. They are interconnected. Not maybe as much as a Defender, but they are interconnected. All modern vehicles are interconnected in this way. And they have this red button, so in other words, if something goes wrong and that car goes into limp mode, you press that button, it turns off absolutely everything, and that engine will run and the car will drive. So they can get out of trouble. So because those vehicles might be used in a war situation or conflict and things like that. And the last thing is that you have a minor accident where you damage something on the car, and it's a minor little thing, and the car says, "Oh well, I've got a fault with my X, Y, or Z. I'll now go into limp mode to protect the car." The operator can say, I need this car to go right now, and they can press that button. And I'm not necessarily saying that Defender should do the same basic thing, but surely that's possible. It's possible to make this car adventure ready, because at the moment it's just not. I wouldn't trust it. I wouldn't trust it at all. I'm glad you said that, and you work for Jaguar Land Rover, because as I said, the car's a brilliant performer, really is. I would, if it wasn't for all of those electrics, I would consider buying one instead of saying a Land Cruiser 300. I would definitely think about buying a Defender. It's more an interesting car. It's far nicer to look at, but then again, that's not easy. That's not difficult when it comes to the Land Cruiser 300. When I reviewed it, I called it, I compared it to Mr. Creosote. It is so ugly. It's not bad in the darker colours. I can live with it, but the lighter colours, it's just this big ugly thing. I have driven in it. I've not driven it myself. The ride is excellent. The ride is better than the Land Cruiser 200, and the Land Cruiser 200 is a very, very good ride. And so, but is it as good a ride and as comfortable as a Defender? No, I don't think so. Certainly not. No, I don't think so. I think the Defender is even better a ride. They just ruined it with that stupid electronic nonsense. Because the programmers have no idea what does adventure mean to them? Going to the movies at midnight instead of the matinee, and that's adventure to the guys that program these Land Rovers. They haven't got a clue. That's just what I think. All right, let's have a look. Let's go back to Patreons and see if there are any other Patreons awake this time. All right, FJ Cruiser. Tight on space, but 5'2" people, goes anywhere, bulletproof. I've driven a couple of times. I've had an opportunity to drive and did a test in about 2012, 13, somewhere around there, of the FJ Cruiser. And I absolutely loved that car. It's, for two people, you could actually have a real fun, and maybe not a real serious overlander, because it's a bit tight on space and range and things like that, but not workable. It's a workable overlander, no question about it, and it's great to drive. It's basically a Prado base, and it's a really interesting car, and it's great off-road. It's fantastic off-road. Gideon has the Lexus GX 470, like the one I drove in 2017, and we did a trip in the States, Oregon high country in the States. That one that I drove was ruined with a suspension downgrade. They had put in an Ironman suspension downgrade, and it was hideous. They'd ruined the car. Other than that, it was incredibly heavy on fuel. Also the 5.7 V8, if I'm correct. I'm torn between the Land Cruiser 200 and the new Ford Ranger or Toyota Tacoma. So I'm not understanding. You're torn between a Land Cruiser 200, which is a station wagon, and a new Ford Ranger, which is an inexpensive light-duty ute. Toyota Tacoma, inexpensive light-duty ute for my next vehicle. Station wagon. You need to watch the Overland Workshop and choosing a 4-wheel drive. You need to watch that, because you need to watch that, because for me, I've had all kinds, and I definitely prefer a station wagon over a ute. Trippy is the best of both worlds. It's neither. I think I'd like a go-fast camper on the back. So if you want to put a camper on the back, obviously you need a ute. But think about weight. None of these light utes can carry a heavy load without having quite poor handling problems. You have this big weight at the back. Now you're like a pendulum. And when you're driving off-road, you've got this back end of the car that kind of does this. Horrible to drive. Be very, very careful about that weight on the back of that camper if you're going off-road, because some handle it well and others just plain don't. And that's why I did, for example, the chassis extension on my Dream Tourer, because on the standard Land Cruiser 79 double cab, it's lousy at carrying that weight. Heavy camper. It's just bad at it, and it doesn't handle nicely. So I got a chassis extension which in effect moved the load 300 millimeters forward of where the back axle would have been, and it handled really quite well. But that's a very expensive modification, so just be aware of that. You're watching this show from the departure lounge at Bali Airport, Hamish. Please get all the good bits of this show in before 11:20 when my plane takes off. Okay, Hamish, I feel for you. Airports, but it's nice that you're traveling. Bali, we're going to Bali next year. We've got a trip planned going to Bali, actually shoot something in Bali. It's a lovely place. It's a wonderful place. The people are fantastic. It's dirt cheap. It's 3.5 hours from where I live by plane, and you want really nice food. It's fantastic. There are problems with Bali belly. You've got to be a bit careful with what you eat, but I really look forward to going to Bali. So the whole family's going. The entire family is going to Bali. Daughters, Gwyn, everything. Son-in-laws, the works. It's going to be so brilliant. It's probably the thing that I'm looking forward to the most. See, next year, what have I got next year? I've got the Africa trip. I'm about to release the video on the color. It's dropped. It is seriously gorgeous. The car it might be the most beautiful troop carrier I have ever seen. And it hasn't even got anything bolted to it yet. That color. Man, it's good. I'm so excited about it. It was very funny that the video you will see, not this week, but the following week, Paul reveals the video. He actually does a little presentation and on camera, which I'm just going to show you. I've edited it a bit, but it's very, very funny. Bastard. But it got me good. But anyway, gorgeous car. All right. Next week. So then South Africa. We're going to do a long trip in South Africa. And then we've got this new project we've been keeping secret. I still can't reveal it yet because the vehicle has not arrived. And we were expecting it to have had it by now, but it hasn't arrived. And that's a out-of-the-box thinking project, which I'm doing next year. And so we'll be doing something in Australia, big thing in Australia, and then doing Bali probably in November, about a year's time. Okay, I'm trying to understand why Jeep gets absolutely no love in Australia. JT Gladiator is absolutely brilliant overlander, and if you're good at packing and customization, the Wrangler JL with the roof conversion is as good or better. Granted, not the living space of a 78, but here in the Jeep rules, in the background here, it seems to me that the JL or JT with the Rubicon package should be poised to take over the Outback, and yet they're the butt of bad jokes. Can you help me understand why? Peter from urban New York City. I wish I could do it in a Brooklyn accent. I've been watching a show based in New York City, and I love those accents. Reliability is one of those things, and payload. Jeep has not got a good rap in this country. They've had more recalls than almost any other car in history. They're always hitting the news with recalls. I think the platform, because it is so easy to modify, is fantastic in that respect. The Rubicon versions off-road, I think, are probably the best off-the-shelf off-road vehicles you can buy. But remember, people in Australia, they are doing a lot of off-roading, but they're also doing a lot of touring. And the touring here the distances are huge. Like really, you have to have 1,000 miles in your tank to drive in Australia, and that's what people are. So you're now taking water, you're taking that much fuel, and the Achilles heel of Jeep is its payload. Look at it, the wheel bearings of a Jeep. They're very, very small. They're very, very light duty. They're just not designed for a heavy load. So now to get a Jeep, it's not impossible to get a Jeep to carry a heavy load and work well. But you have to do a lot of work to get it right, and it's a lot expensive. And whereas you can buy a Land Cruiser And you must also remember that while there are a lot of accessories in this country for Jeep, not as many as there are in the United States, there's even more available for Toyotas. I'm a little surprised too that Jeep isn't more popular here, to be honest, because I think it's a great platform, and I think it's you do see quite a lot around. But the butt of a joke, I mean, yeah, they are a butt of a joke, but then Land Cruisers. I mean, the patrol guys will say Land Cruisers keep breaking their rear axles. No, they don't. It's just because the patrol owners know that their axles are actually a bit stronger than that, and they are a bit stronger than Land Cruiser axles. It doesn't mean to say that the Land Cruiser axle is weak. It just means to say that the patrol axle is particularly strong. Jeep axle, standard Jeep axle, it's a bit weak because when you load it, they break. And when we did canning stock in 2017, we came across two stranded people. One was in a 6-wheel drive Ford Ranger with a very heavy camper on the back, and they had broken one of their they had broken something on the back suspension, and they were stranded. And the other one was a Jeep. It was I think it was a JK, if I remember correctly. Might have been a JL, but I think it was JK. And they had lost a wheel bearing. The wheel bearing had and they had organised some spares, and it was because they were so heavy that you Land Cruiser and patrols are designed for a bit of abuse. Jeep, not so much. That's probably why. There are very few gladiators here. Very, very few gladiators. You see them occasionally, and I think to myself, why aren't there more of those around? But but they don't have a good reputation with reliability for some reason that I don't really know. Giovanni from Brazil has the best 4x4 for me is the Mercedes Geländewagen. Even though that's not what I drive, I wish to only. I do love my Grand Vitara. I'll tell you a story now about Grand Vitara. And that's far from the best 4x4. I kind of got married to the GV once I serviced it to be bulletproof, literally. So I'll tell you about a Suzuki Grand Vitara story now. Mercedes G, I have no time for the 463 versions. Well, there are one or two that are not bad, but most the pimped up ones, I just leave me stone cold. But the 461 series, I had two of them. I had the 290 GD. I thought were absolutely wonderful, and I've never owned a better off-road vehicle. They were good at touring. We did several touring trips. They had a great payload. They were as strong as anything. They were, when you drove them off-road, I'm kind of expecting the Enos Grenadier to be similar. When you drove them off-road, it almost felt like they'd been honed out of a single block of metal. It was just so good. And the way this thing used to track over rough terrain. I won't repeat stories about the G-Wagon, but I will tell you about the Suzuki Grand Vitara story. I was given one for a review. There was a chap called, I wonder if he's watching, his name is Richard Giller. He now runs the ARB store in Somerset West, and I actually saw him when I was there in February. It was early March, I think. Anyway, went and said hello to him and filmed something in their store. That video hasn't been released, but it will be as part of the South African build. And he used to run tag-along tours, and we did one in the Drakensberg Mountains, probably 4 hours from my home at that time in Johannesburg. I was still living in Johannesburg. So this would have been 1995, 96, somewhere around there. And I was given a Grand Vitara. Standard out of the box was a press vehicle. And I arrived to do one of his tag-alongs, and his tag-alongs were fun because they were quite difficult off-road, and then you would do this beautiful scenic drive through the mountains, and then you would end up on a riverbed, and you'd do a little bit more. And it was really well recce'd, and it was great fun. And he had an assistant, and I think the guy's name was Hamish. And Hamish got the Land Rover 110 pickup stuck in a riverbed, blocking the path, and it started raining. And I was behind it, and he was the lead vehicle. It was Richard, and then Hamish. It was a gold-coloured. Why do I remember it so clearly? Gold-coloured 110, and he got stuck in the riverbed, and they were struggling to get it out. And it started raining, and Richard came to me and said, "Andrew, when these roads that we've just done get wet, they're just clay, and these people we're with, there's not enough experience there. That can you find a way to get them back home?" I said, "But I've got a Vitara. Already I've had to crawl and inch my way through on this track, and I really had dinged the bottom a couple of times. And when I borrow vehicles from I don't bend them. I don't." So now he asked me to do this, and the rain started coming down. And and Richard said to everybody, "Andrew is going to find a way." And I led a convoy of 5 or 6. They were Land Cruiser 80 series, probably a 110 or 2, a couple of utes, a mix of vehicles. I don't remember clearly what, but I remember that little Vitara was fantastic. It was, when you drive it, it's got this feeling that, I don't know, Giovanni, you might agree with me. It's got this kind of, it's not unlike the Subaru Forester, not the current one, the earlier ones. You felt so much in contact with the vehicle. You knew what all of the wheels were doing all of the time, and yes, the clearance was lousy, but everything else was fantastic. And I remember, because it was light and fantastic, when the road started getting extremely slippery, I just had fun. I didn't have this great big heavy four-wheel drive with stuff on the roof, kind of, you know when it's like when you start sliding those big four-wheel drives, the high center of gravity starts affecting the way the thing handles, and it can be quite terrifying. Suzuki was absolutely fantastic, and I got them through. And it was actually at that stage that I realized, actually, this car with a few little mods could be brilliant, could be a fantastically fun off-road vehicle. So I imagine that's what you've got now. Right. Chris and Diane, your thoughts on the 24 available in the US? So the 24 Land Cruiser available in the US. Okay, I don't know too much about the battery systems in the US version of the hybrid. Basically, what you're getting is a Prado. It is the Prado. They're calling it Land Cruiser in America. We call it Prado here. I love the look of it. I think it's that interior. For decades, the people at Toyota, the interior designers at Toyota, must have led incredibly dull lives, because, man, it manifested in some of the dullest interiors imaginable. Check out the new Prado's interior. It's fantastic. That dashboard, it's just, I love it. Well, only the pictures, I haven't seen the real thing, but massive improvement. And I think the car looks great. So you're talking about that great big battery that is going to be a weight issue. Yes, it is. Over a solid front axle Land Cruiser option here in the US. Look, yeah, that's we get solid axles, and we like solid axles, and thank goodness, as I said earlier, the best news of last year was that Toyota was going to continue with the 70 series, which means we can still drive the cars we want, and they will have solid front axles. Tristan, I have a 2009 Prado 120 with a V6. during the pandemic before I found your channel and learned about overlanding. That said, a friend is parting with his 2003 Disco 2 V8, which likes a great fun car, and forced me to learn about mechanical matters. Yeah. Land Rovers have that tendency to kind of force the owners to learn more about mechanical things. That is true. The Discovery 2. I hope it hasn't got that ACS, I think they call it. What do they call it? Active suspension. It automatically was a hydraulic system that kept the car level when driving around corners, but you can disengage it when going off road. It worked brilliantly. It was as unreliable as anything, but it worked brilliantly. So that was pretty nifty. But the Disco 2 is again, simple. Take out that rubbish and it's simple. Sander from Amsterdam, Land Rover Defender 110. Got a lot of, in Holland, a lot of dedicated Land Rover 110 fans. It's been since I was 3 years old. I'm 42 and I owned a Defender 110 for about 5 years now. Daily driver and overlanding in Norway, Spain, Portugal. It's a Puma. Would rather have the TD5 engine. Why would you rather have the TD5 engine than a Puma? Because it's more reliable. But wanted to have more modern dashboard and aircon since it's our only car. Yeah, the Puma had a far better interior, far more ergonomically friendly. It still only had vents in the middle like the earlier 110. Didn't have any vents on the side. So you're driving it, assuming a right-hand steering, this side is nice and warm, nice and cool, and this side's all really hot. But still, it was so much better than the. But then with the Puma, you couldn't open those front little vents. With my V8 110, I could open those V8s, and it was wonderful in the bush. You'd open the V8, the slats underneath the windscreen, wind down the window. You'd have to lean forward to get out because the B pillar's like right here, but it was just lovely. But they took that out when they put the Puma in, and they changed some of the body. And here's a video maker using FX6, A7S III, etc. Yeah, they're nice cameras. The Sony cameras are very nice. Right, let's get back to your questions. We have 228 concurrent viewers. So it's telling me, or lots of comments, it's telling me that I've got a couple of super chats. Have I got any super chats? Actually, no. That's something else. All right. So, very good. Let's see, where did I leave off and help you guys out? Other guys with a patrol. I don't see Defender for 6 continuous month in the continuous month in the Sahara. No. Andrew, please don't compare a Defender with a Troopy. I have never compared a Defender with a Troopy. I'm talking about new Defender. Old Defender, you can compare it with a Troopy, because even the conversion that I had have on my troop carrier, they make for Defender, but I'm talking about old Defender. So you can. Well, the way I look at it is, what vehicles can you compare? You can compare similar vehicles. Troopy and Defender, solid axle, coil springs, yeah, unfortunately, leaf springs at the back of the Toyota, but you're saying, what is the vehicle designed for and what is it able to do? The things that are vastly different, then you shouldn't compare them. So comparing a troop carrier with a new Defender would be ridiculous, because one it's pointless. I might as well compare my Troopy with a Jaguar F-Type. Two completely different cars. The fact that the Defender and Troopy both have four-wheel drive, well, I don't they make an F-Type with a four-wheel drive? It doesn't matter. They're so different vehicles. They're completely different vehicles. The Troopy is a favourite vehicle because it's a solid axle, proper four-wheel drive vehicle with a simple chassis, and on top of that, it's a van, which means camping with it and converting it into an overlander is easy, and it has 2 big fuel tanks as standard. And the thing is with Troopy, you can use it as an overlander, and you wouldn't have to. You strap down a fridge in the back, and it's an overlander. Honestly, it's that. Yes, you can make it better by putting in nice suspensions, and and I do, and I've gone mad with my one to make it better, and it's a lot better than standard. But you don't have to. You don't have to. You could take a troop carrier out of the factory and do the canning stock route every day for 20 years and just service it, and it would handle it. It's because it's designed for that specific purpose. And Defenders are just not designed for that. They're designed for a different purpose, and they're much better for a different purpose. So I try and compare things that are similar. For example, will I compare the Ineos Grenadier with Troopy? I can to a point, but I probably won't. But I am intending to take on the same trip a Land Cruiser 76. Why 76? Well, it's a 5-door, solid axle, heavy duty, off-roader with low transfer gearing. And they're both station wagons. Fair comparison? I think so. Right. I'm going to get to Craig. Thank you, Craig, for your contribution. From Edmonton in Canada. Or Canada. Did you get annoyed with me when I called it Canada? I just wanted to get a rise out of you people. Canada is lovely, and I shall be back. Lovely, lovely people. Rex, thank you again. Thank you very much. It's 2 a.m. Saturday morning, me need my beauty sleep. Well, thank you, Lex. It's been a pleasure keeping you awake. Hi, everybody. FJ Cruiser 2. Definitely my first car was a 1972 FJ40 Land Cruiser, and wish I had it back. Only thing that I would change would be to swap the 3-speed for a 4-speed. I've never owned a really old Land Cruiser. Of course, I have owned really old Land Rovers. One of the vehicles, there are 2 vehicles in all of the, I think I've owned now 18 4-wheel drive vehicles. There are 2 that I actually owned, but I've not mentioned in that 18 because I kept them for such a short time. Gwen and I were going to start a safari tour business in South Africa, and we bought a Series 3 Land Rover. And it was a bit of a knee-jerk. It became available, and there was somebody we knew, and we thought when we bought it. And I drove it around a bit and sold it. I think I kept it for 3 weeks and sold it. I did nothing to it, and I got my money back because we realized that, in fact, if we wanted to do tours and take people out on these things, that vehicle was just too uncomfortable. It was too noisy. It would take so much money to get it vaguely comfortable for them. We realized it was, and we didn't start that business. And that had the 2.25 Land Rover engine in it. The other one, of course, was when I first arrived in Australia, end of 2016, I bought the 79 double cab, the grey one, and we were going to fit a camper to it, and we did some test fitting of the camper, and I kept that vehicle also for about 4 weeks. And when that camper I loved the camper. The camper was brilliant. It was made by a company called Quick Pitch that seems to have now left Australia. They're no longer in Australia. They were an Australian company, but I don't know what's going on there, which is a pity because they make some really, really nice products. But they made this thing called the Quick Pitch camper, and it was absolutely brilliant. But at that same time, they actually took it off the market. So I then swapped it for a troop carrier. So I've actually owned 20 4-wheel drives. But those 2 were just so insignificant. Let me just have it. The reason why Defenders are popular in Europe is because the 70 series is not sold here. For tax purposes, I suppose. I don't know if it's that, but that's it's a pity that you guys don't get you don't get the 70 series. All right, let's have a look. Go back to our Patreons and see if there are any other Patreons that have asked questions. FJ, 280,000 miles on 3 continents so far. MT Nomad, easy to drive and fix. Would love better seats. I can understand that. All right. Night, Rex has said, "Night, Andrew, better than any movie, anytime, mate." Wow, that's cool. I didn't actually feel like doing this tonight, actually, because I had some bad and more fighting with CASA to get my aircraft in the air. Now it's not the aircraft I've managed to get sorted. Now it's my certification that's in question. I've done all my flight tests, passed my flight review and everything. I can still fly an aeroplane. I didn't find it too difficult to get it back again. I was a little rusty, and now there's another problem. So anyway, I still keep fighting. Why can't I find any rooftop conversions for the Nissan Patrol GU? All right, let me explain. That's a really, really good question. It isn't the fact that it's a Nissan or anything. The conversion of a car to cut off the roof. Remember, most cars, including Patrol, most four-wheel drives, including Patrol, have the ladder frame chassis, but they do take quite a bit of their strength also from the body. Okay, the Troop Carrier doesn't. The 76 Land Cruiser, not really anything at all, or the 79. The Patrol, if you look at the way the Patrol is made, its body is the complexity in cutting the roof and still enabling all of the doors to open and close is highly complex. The reason why it's easy with a Defender and easy with a Troopy is because they have raised roofs. The roof is higher than normal. It would be very easy to do a G-Wagon because it has a raised roof. Anything without a raised roof, far more complicated to do. That's why. Somebody said to me the other day, and he didn't actually understand the Troop Carrier terribly well, I don't believe. He owns it. He owned a 76, and so he said, "I don't understand the Troop Carrier with this conversion." He said, 76 is much better. And I said, "Why is the 76 better?" And he said, "Because I can access it. I've got 5 doors instead of 3." And I said, granted, the Troop Carrier's weakness is the fact that access is not that good, but you solve it with gull wings. Solved. Completely solved. Not maybe as good as an extra 2 full doors, but you can solve it. All right. And so with something like a Patrol, you do have that access of those extra doors, but you don't have a raised roof. So now it's really complicated to do a roof cutout and keep that stiffness in the body, because it does require some stiffness in the body. So you can do it because it has a ladder frame chassis, but to hold the body together because of the doors, really complicated. And that's why there aren't more of them for more vehicles. It's the raised roof issue, mainly. So, Double Cool Gamer, I hope that answers your question, and thank you for your contribution. They did it for, Alucab did it for the 76 Land Cruiser. I have seen none. It hasn't come to Australia. Why hasn't it come to Australia? Maybe because they can't get it certified or approved or something. And there are no YouTubers that I know of that are using it. They're still buying Troop Carriers. So it isn't. I don't know if it's a success. It looked very interesting, but I don't know if it's a success. And this person said to me he didn't understand the difference, and he said all it is a rooftop tent that you can get into from the inside. And I said no, that is not it. It's not it. If it was just that, it wouldn't be worth it. I agree with you, but it's not that. And he said, well, in that case, what is it? And I said, it's because I can climb inside when the weather is really foul, and it's a small van. And I can chill in there. I rock up on the beach. Rock up, eh? I'm still with my South African stuff there. Still there, eh? I rock up on the beach, and I check out the waves, and it's lekker. And I sit there, and I take my mattresses from the top, and I put them in there. I put my pillows behind me. I get myself a beer, and I chill. and I'm relaxed in the back of my cruiser. I've just opened it up and I relax. I'm in the car, protected from the weather, chilling. I got a little van. 76, you can't do that. It's not big enough to do that and doesn't have the raised roof to do that. So a big difference. Big difference between the two. What happens to the X-Trail for the budget SUV? Man. Stella, what happened to the X-Trail? You've missed a lot of videos, mate. So they sold that X-Trail. They did several trips in it. They're not YouTubers. They don't record all their trips. They bought, and it's on the channel, they bought a Isuzu four-wheel drive, and Kate and Cam built a rudimentary camper system in it, which was actually really, really brilliant, and it was inspired by what Heiner did to his Hilux in terms of the way the backpacking area, and it's a really interesting, very, very interesting system. It was inexpensive, incredibly practical. He's got a lovely, lovely Isuzu. In fact, we're going driving tomorrow. Myself, Cam, Luke from Klarman Automotive Solutions, and Heiner. We're going driving. We're just going to do some off-road driving tomorrow. I'm taking the trippy because we feel like it's tomorrow. And so I'll get a couple of shots of the Isuzu. It's a great explanation. I was considering the option of doing a conversion on the Patrol, but clearly it won't work. 70 series are super expensive and are very rare here in Europe. Yes, they are. Yeah, I understand. I feel sorry for you guys in the US and Europe. You don't get it. You don't get some of the best vehicles. It's true, particularly in Europe. In the States, you can still find some alternatives which are... I suppose I should release my video. I did a video and I've recorded it over about a year in 4 different locations. What I would build if I was in the US, what I would build in North America. And I've decided what I would build in North America. I'm not going to tell you what it is now. I will release the video. Will the Pajero Sport make a good overlander? So, Andre, you are now looking at a vehicle that is... What kind of overlanding do you want to do, and what kind of range? Because again, it's a light-duty station wagon with not a great payload. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Can you increase the payload so you can increase your range and carry water and fuel and things like that? I did a trip with a chap in the Richtersveld, which is the far northern part of South Africa, and the northern west, and on the east, basically on the far northeast coast of South Africa. It's the only desert mountain area in southern Africa, and or South Africa. And I drove a Fortuna. My guide was driving a 80 series Land Cruiser with 35-inch wheels, and I was in a stock Fortuna, and I kept up with him the whole way. My problem was range. That was my problem. So I had very rudimentary camping system, a tent, a little fridge in the back. There were 2 of us in the car, and we struggled a bit with range. But as a performer, did brilliantly. Pajero Sport's very nice car, very, very good car. It's a good car. It's fantastic value. They're reliable. They're well made. They've got they're really good ride. Get some decent shocks and decent tires. And if you can get a little bit of extra payload, do that. But yes, I think it would work well. Honestly, I will. I do think it will work well. YouTube Car Spotter's Guide, 2003 Sequoia TRD would make a cool camper. So I don't know the TRD Sequoia. What is the Sequoia based on? Is that I don't know the car very well. I saw them when I was there and I was interested in them, but I know they've been sold in the US for 20, 30 years. The Sequoia is a very old model, but I don't know the 23 Sequoia. Is it more off-roady than the standard Sequoia? Because the standard Sequoia is not really very off-roady at all. So I don't really know too much about that. When I do my test on the Grenadier, I'm going to be camping in the back of it. I'm going to take some basic camping gear and go away for a weekend, so I can live with the car. around a campfire. And it's a good way of testing a vehicle because you can kind of think about it, and you've driven it for the day and do a bit of off-road driving and you think about it around the campfire. And I don't know if I can sleep in the back of it. I might take a tent just in case I can't, because I think I've heard that the folding seats don't work terribly well. Anyway, that's I'm really looking forward to that. Abel has a 73 Marshall body Land Rover with a 2.5 petrol engine. It's a slug. Contemplating a 300 TD5 4.6 V8 conversion. Which do you think will do best in highway speeds? The 4.6 V8 conversion will drink fuel, and the 300 TDI will make hardly any difference. Actually, it's a 2.25 petrol engine. Yeah, actually will make a big difference. Yeah, they will make a big difference. I drove a Land Rover. It was a really early one. It was an early 110, so it wasn't even a Defender. You can tell because it had the old-fashioned door handles, those wonderful door handles, and a 2.25 and a 2.25 four-cylinder. It was in Dubai. You had to drive that car. All these cars passing, one after the other. Such fun. I love those cars for short runs. It was a day run, but for a week run, I'm too old. What did they say? I'm getting too old for this shit. Hi, we're all looking overland Southern Africa. We're looking to book overland Southern Africa 4 months. We are family of 4. What vehicle would you suggest? Toyota. Okay, John, there is a course on the Overland Workshop called Overlanding in Southern Africa. And if you don't find the information there, you won't find it anywhere. That's the best way. What vehicle? What kind of trip do you want to do? What's your route? How many people? What kind of range do you need? It's all there. So you'll be able to, and there are some good four-wheel drive rental companies in Southern Africa. It'll also talk about the different countries and where you need to look after yourself and be a little careful, and where it's really easy and free. And so get local advice. Very, very important for Southern Africa if you want to stay safe. And staying safe is easy. Get local advice would be my recommendation. I would love to review of the Grenadier. This is Andrew. That targets those of us sleeping inside of our cars. Oh, that's what I actually said. Yeah, I didn't read your thing. I'm going to be trying to sleep in the back of the Grenadier. How easy is it to do that? The one I'm getting is quite a nicely equipped Grenadier with a lot of factory conversions, factory accessories. So I think it'll be good. I'm really looking forward to that. We can buy the new 4-litre V6 Land Cruiser 70 Series in Germany. You can buy you can buy a Land Cruiser 70 Series with that 4-litre motor, the petrol motor. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I thought that actually, yes, that's right. You can. Can you get any of the 70 Series in Germany? I know Tom's something Fabrik does the Troopy conversions, and also does 79 conversions, very expensive conversions. So he gets the vehicles. Yes, that's right. They do have the petrol V6. Petrol V6 actually works very well in that car. It actually goes very well, but it's heavy on fuel. It is really heavy on fuel. All right. Let's have a quick look at my Patreon, see if you guys have anybody else. What do you think of the new Ford Ranger and Ineos Grenadier pickup? Asking as an agricultural worker in the UK. Whoa. Certainly the Grenadier is a lot more interesting than a Ford. I can't really comment. What would I buy? I'd buy a Grenadier. What's more interesting? Is it as good as the Ford? I bet you the Ford is a lot cheaper. So difficult for me to not having, and also your farm use. I looked at the the Grenadier, what do they call it, the Trailmaster? Do they call it? No, what do they call the pickup? No, not Trailmaster. You'll know. It had strange bars on the back. And I looked at the bars, and the bars were over the back, and it was along the sides, and the bars were... And I thought, don't they understand how people pack pickups? They throw things over the back, throw over the side. You've now made it, it's already high. You've now made it this much higher than an already high side bin for throwing things into the back. People don't load pickups by throwing things in the back. They throw things in the side as much as they do in the back. So why would you make the sides higher with those bars? So you can tie things down, but there are tie downs. There are other tie downs. You don't need those bars to protect it. Well, I came up with an idea that I think is far, far better than that, is that you put a plastic cap over the entire bin around. Plastic cap. And they snap into place. And after a year of abuse, you unclip them and you go to your Grenadier or your Ineos accessory place and you pay £45 for another set, and you bang it into place, and it protects the most vulnerable part of the pickup. Don't put bars on it. Bars are just for looks. It's fine, bars. If you want to carry rhinos in the back, yeah, put bars. Otherwise, don't put bars. Put some kind of protective. That's what I would do anyway. But they didn't ask me. They've got a plastic thing on the back, fold down on the Grenadier pickup. Have it all the way around and have it removable. I bet you that's not removable at the back. I bet you it's part of the whole thing. It's not removable. No, I don't think any ute manufacturer has done that to protect the back, most vulnerable part of a pickup. Camtech in the US makes roof conversions for the non-raised Land Cruisers. 80, 100, 120 series, perhaps something similar could work for a patrol. I don't know that. Are they roof conversions? Well, see, again, they might do it for those vehicles, but will they have the... I'd like to see them. They do it for the Jeep. In fact, I shared a stand with the guys at Safari, JK Safari, Texas-based company. They do a Troopy-esque roof conversion for Jeep, and it's a slightly extended body, and I thought it was quite impressive. I thought it was a really interesting, definitely worth checking out, because you can actually, in that Jeep, pop the roof and sit in the back. You can. So it can be done. Alrighty, let's go back and see who else is here. We have 194 people watching the show at this moment. Quartermaster, that's correct, Andre. It's the Quartermaster. They are not standard. No, the bars are not standard. They are not standard. It is true, they're not. I just thought whoever designed them was doing it more for looks than practicality. I couldn't think of a really good practical use for those bars. I thought maybe just some designer was making it look cool, as opposed to making it really practical, which I think is part of Grenadier's problem. They've spent a lot of time making it cool. I suppose in today's world that's important. But right, I put mine on the bull bar and does not affect the vision. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Okay, there are a lot of 4x4s I like, but when I travel in Australia, every town has a mechanic who knows Toyota. That is very, very true. It's very, very true. It's the most common. You'll find somebody who knows Toyota and Holden, no matter where you go. Hello, John from Northern California. Hi, Andrew from Mike. Camel Trophy Comms car. Okay, you were AK4 from Camel Trophy Comms car. 96, 97, 90, and the Ribs 2000. Enjoy your vlogs and thank you. Well, Mike, that's an accolade from when Land Rovers made real four-wheel drives. And they did. They made some great four-wheel drives. I've still got one. It looks a bit like this. Great four-wheel drive. One of the greatest four-wheel drives ever made. But that's my opinion, and I am biased. How would you, Andrew, I know you like the G-Wagon 461 and not the 463. Is that a personal choice or taste? Is the 463 actually bad off-road, providing you put suitable wheels and a suspension on the 463? No, 463 is fine. The 463, though, is the way it's the way it's dressed. Wheels, tires, shock absorbers, suspension, springs, and things like that. It's dressed for street use. And it actually is very good off-road. So you can take a 463 and get it right for off-road. You can. 461, take it out of the showroom. Brilliant as it drives out of the showroom. Just brilliant. So the 463 really, the 463 that I don't like are the bling ones. The bling, you know, the hype with the low profile tires and the G500s and things like that. They're not built for what I do. And the ones built for what I do are simply brilliant. I remember, I've probably told this story before, and if I have and you've heard it, tough. There was a guy called John Rich and his farm in Stony Ridge. And I would arrive, I went there quite often. Whenever I was up in Johannesburg, I always go past John's place. We would do some driving. We did a lot of filming there. I helped him take pictures for one of his book. He did some four-wheel drive books that were sponsored by Mitsubishi. And John is an outstanding four-wheel drive instructor. The best four-wheel drive instructor I've ever known is John Rich. Lovely bloke and an outstanding driver. And we would get together for a project or something, and I would arrive at the top of his farm in my G-Wagon, and I would literally brace myself against, and I'd take a little bit of weight off the Recaro seats. My first one had standard Recaro seats. I just braced myself a little bit, and I would go flat out down this road. It was rough. The G-Wagon I would never do that in my troop carrier. It would shake me to pieces, even with the shocks and the springs that I've got in it now. It would be so unbearable. The G-Wagon just glides. The way the axles track over rough ground, they just track so brilliantly, and the steering is light, and it's brilliant. Honestly, fantastic car. I cannot praise them high enough. Love another G-Wagon. Don't know what if I had another G-Wagon, I'd just go off-roading in it, just pure off-road, because they're that good for that. And I'd use it as my everyday car, and I'd go off-road in it, and keep my troopy for touring. And I would get a 461 series, probably a 290 GD or something like that. I would love another G-Wagon. I don't know about the baby G that Mercedes is talking about. I don't know anything about that. Biased you are, Andrew, but we love you anyhow. Old South African smiles. Dirk, yes, I am biased. We're all biased. Who's not biased? As a reporter, I'm not supposed to be biased. How can you not? How can you not be biased? You have to fall in love with. If you fall in love with your car, that means you're going to be biased towards that car, and you're going to talk about it and I like to admit the bad points about the troop carrier. It has many bad points. Many. But it has so many good points that I don't think about the bad points. You learn to live with the bad points, but you love the good points. Same with any car that you fall in love with, because it's not just the car. It's what it does for you, what it does, and what's what it makes you feel. That's what car lovers do. And then you get silly and you start talking about G-Wagons and how well they are. The G-Wagon has a couple of weaknesses. The manual G-Wagon has a clutch not much bigger than this little thing around my microphone. Tiny little clutch. Why they put such a tiny little clutch in it? And mine's are autos, so I didn't have the problem. And front differential lock activator. They're so fiddly and unreliable. But so many great things about the car that you know. Anyway, what do you think about the... Right, let me see if I can scan you down here. Thank you for your contribution, G. I appreciate that. That's how big wheels went on the modified Gs, and it needed a winch type solution. So I'm kind of following a trend of discussions here. Afternoon, Yarpy, please can you give more kudos to Sir Jim? His vision comes from the best place, tradition and values. Yeah, I don't really buy that, actually. You're talking about the billionaire industrialist Sir Jim, who came up with the money for Grenadier. Hey, I think it was brave, because it's a narrow market. You know how I feel about the fact that I think they lost their way a bit, but I still think that car has got enormous value because of what it does. It particularly because it's being sold in the United States, and it ticks so many boxes. And I will be finding out, as I said earlier, later on. This is early November. I will be finding out how many of those boxes it ticks. I think it's going to do well. Honestly, I do actually think it's going to do well. But I think I'm going to put a list down of all the important criteria for a four-wheel drive touring, heavy-duty workhorse four-wheel drive, and that's what they set out to produce. That's what they set out to produce. The part that I was hoping, spiritual replacement for the Defender is some of the words that they used. I think they failed on that ground because of the cost of it. Let's get past that. What did they heavy duty, four-wheel drive, all these things. How well did they do? So we have to look at ease of packing, ease of attaching accessories, interior, comfort, and that kind of thing. If it's a bit noisy, it's not going to worry me if it's a bit noisy. Honestly, because of what it is. They're not trying to make a Land Cruiser 300. So it's noisier than a Land Cruiser 300. That's not a negative. They weren't trying to build one. What they were trying to build is this heavy-duty four-wheel drive vehicle. How well did it do? And most importantly, value. Is it good value? Because I've got a certain amount of money that I now need to spend. Say it's $100,000, and I'm going to go and buy myself I can't quite afford a Land Cruiser 300, but I could afford a Grenadier. What else could I spend with $100,000? What's its value like? And that's really, I think, my biggest single question is, yes, it's a bit expensive, more expensive than I hope it would be. How good is its value? I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't looked forward to driving a new vehicle this much for a long, long time. Honestly, and I know I give Ineos a hard time, but I am excited about that car. And I said so right up front. Which car would be best suited for North and West Africa road trip? Toyota Land Cruiser or Toyota Hilux? So let me carry on reading now. I have a Toyota Hilux chassis being cracked, defenders with broken brake lines, loose drive shafts. All right, if you want to do Africa, North or West Africa, you buy a Toyota or you buy a Nissan Patrol. All right, that's it. If you're going to buy a Nissan, it has to be a Patrol. If you're buying a Toyota, it can be a Hilux or it can be a 70 series. If you're going to get a 70 series, I would suggest the 1HZ engine, that donkey thing that I've got in my Africa Troop Carrier, because everybody knows how to fix them, and there are spares everywhere for both Hilux and Land Cruiser 70 series. And weather's going to play a big part in your trip, because parts of West Africa are impassable during the wet season, so you have to be think about that. I'm sure you know that. But that's what I would do. I wouldn't take a Land Rover. Not because it could make it. It would be fine. But if it doesn't, again, what Land Rover spares are probably quite scarce. There was a time when there were reasonable Land Rover spares all over Africa because the NGOs were using Land Rovers, and they're no longer using Land Rovers. They're all Toyotas now. almost exclusively Toyotas. You will find NGOs using Toyotas and some Mitsubishis. And the reason why they like, and some Suzukis. And the reason why they do that is because they can get spares. I remember speaking many years ago to an NGO. He was an operator, operated an NGO vehicle fleet. It was a fascinating discussion, of course. And he said, and I was asking him about different cars and everything, and he said, what's the best passenger carrier? And he said, Nissan Patrol. By far. No question about it. He said, but we don't want them. Why don't you want them? And he said, because they send us Nissan Patrols and they never send us any spare parts. Whereas the Toyota guys can get spare parts. So a Nissan Patrol lasts a couple of years and then it'll break down and then we can't get parts. Whereas the Toyotas, we get parts. So actually we prefer the Patrols, but we can't get parts. I remember him very clearly saying that. G from Doha, currently deciding between 2 4 drives and weekend drives, new manual Y61 Patrol, rear diff lock, and an LC300 with a V6. What would you recommend? You're going to be surprised at this, but I think I would probably go for a Nissan Patrol. I think I would go for the Nissan Patrol. I think. But the Land Cruiser 300 it's a good car. It is a very good car. I don't like the look of it, but it is a very, very good car. Philippe, yes, Range Rover Classic, 1992. VM 2.5, that's the VM 2.5 is the diesel engine. What else? What else? That's easy. What else? 3.5. Keep it classic. Keep it standard. V8 petrol. Can even do the canning stock route with only one little water pipe failure on the whole of the canning stock route. And mine was a 75 model. Aha! So mine's better than yours. My favorite today is a Jimny. Come on, don't jump ahead. I had 2 in Romania, and many 4-wheel drives heavily scratched. We're making 3.5 turns on light road. Jimny is fabulous with 80-litre extended tank. 80 litres in a Jimny. It's like the whole car's tank. No space for a toothbrush. Jimny is fantastic. I love the Jimny. Did you see, I can't remember who did it, somebody took a Jimny, painted it in Toyota sandy taupe, that's that kind of dull brown color, and made it look like a miniature 79 series ute. It was it got about 1 billion views on YouTube. It was one of the best looking, even the grille, that they had done a stunning job on this vehicle. And it looked just like a 70 series. It even had a air intake on the bonnet, like a 70 series. So it was brilliant. So good. Thank you, Tony. Love my honesty. I appreciate that. That's not going to change anytime. If I can't be honest about this thing I'm passionate about, then I'm not going to bother. Did anyone do a cross-Africa trip with a Grenadier and survive? Okay, now you bring up a very good question here. Did anybody do a cross trip? Somebody's doing one right now. I was going to say friend, not really a friend, colleague, known him for a long time. Scott Brady is busy driving a Grenadier across Africa right now. And I assumed that it was a paid gig by Ineos, and apparently it isn't. He actually contacted me because I mentioned him on one of my shows, and I said that I didn't think the Grenadier would have any problem at all driving through Africa, because actually driving across Africa, the biggest challenge is not the road or the car that you're driving. It's because I mentioned that there's a chap that I knew in 1996. He was my old flying instructor. He drove a Rolls Royce from Cape Town to London. No Rolls Royce then. The road's much better now, far better developed now. So his biggest challenge, border posts and bureaucracy at border posts, is his biggest challenge. So I don't think it's a challenge for the vehicle. But Scott is doing it right now, and he, of course, is publishing his findings on the Overland Journal magazine. And I'm looking forward to reading it, because he's actually on the trip right now as we speak. So if you watch this, Scott, my best wishes, my friend. I hope your trip goes brilliantly. Really looking forward to hearing what you get up to. And he, like I expected in his preparing the vehicle, range was his biggest challenge, because the car has fuel tankers too small. We know that already. And he's now doing long distances and loading the vehicle for those long distances. And I'm interested in hearing the logistics behind that very thing. Andrew, I'm not interested in buying another Range Rover. Thank you very much. It's your North. Okay, thank you very much for that. Offered another Range Rover sale. One's enough for me. Thanks very much. I've still got mine. Wanted to add the gents from Footspurer and their cruisers fitted for the South America expedition with custom leisure tech rooftop tents. In my humble opinion, I prefer the product to Alucab. I don't particularly think that Alucab's rooftop tent is... It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. There are better ones. I don't know leisure tech. There are better rooftop tents out there than Alucab. Even the quick pitch one is quite a bit better than Alucab. Alucab haven't changed their tent design in any major way in more than 10 years. So 100 series LX 470. See, in the States, of course, you guys are driving those 100 series, and the 100 series is actually... I know somebody who pranged his, and he'd basically taken a 100 series. Yes, it had the V8 petrol engine, and you'd have to deal with that. And he'd done a bit of work on it and converted it into an Overlander, and it was beautiful. And then he had a minor accident in it. It wasn't worth fixing. They binned it. And he was heartbroken because it's so difficult to find with low mileage. And his was really, really nice, and it was a minor accident. But it was going to cost quite a bit to fix. And the insurance just said it's not worth fixing because it's a 15-year-old car. Or more. I saw a very interesting vehicle in the United States that I thought was very, very nice. It was at the Land Cruiser Museum. I was there. And it was a 200 series. It had the I think it was the 5.7 V8. It didn't have the turbo diesel. It didn't have the 4.5 V8 diesel. It had the petrol V8 diesel, but it was converted into a camper, a proper nice camper on the back of it. And I think it was actually owned by the owner of the museum. That would be good, wouldn't it? That would be really good. You've got the comfort, you've got the camper, and it was at the Overland Expo for a period. How are we doing here? We're almost 2 hours in. So I'm going to wrap this up in about 10 minutes' time, or if I don't get any other questions. Peter is saying, regarding your comments about the Jeep roof conversions, California company called Ursa Minor has been making replacement pop-up roof conversions for JKs and now JLs for about 10 years. They're $10,000 and you can access them from the interior of the Jeep. Quite innovative, like your Troopy. And you can fully set it up in under a minute. Intend to get one in a couple of years once I get a new Rubicon. Isn't that interesting? That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's new to me. Tristan, would you like to try and get your hand on the new 4-door Jimny? Yes, but I don't know where that is. I've seen pictures of it. It's available in India, isn't it? I don't know if it's coming through Australia. That's the trouble with the Jimny. It's too small. A 4-door would be such an interesting thing. I think keeping the same engine was a little disappointing for many. Maybe, yeah. Some argue the 2-door will be better off-road still. I think the 2-door will not necessarily better off-road. I think that longer wheelbase will actually help with its hill climbs. I believe stock. I believe so, but I think with suspension and tires upgraded, cannot help wonder if the four-door will be less likely to feel like it would flip on steep inclines, and decline with those little longer wheelbase versus the two-door. I agree with you. That balance, that longer wheelbase will help in most off-road situations, except for the very, very lumpy, twisty ones. It'll be better off-road. Probably better off-road, my guess is. Carl, the strange thing about the Quartermaster is it does not have a 1-ton payload, which is a problem in the UK, as it means you cannot get commercial tax break. Yes, tax exemption, which is a big deal for farmers over here. Wonder why. Did they miss that? That was a big thing, because I know there was somebody who actually bought one and then sold one, a YouTuber, because of that thing. Anyway, it's an interesting one. It's a very interesting one. Right. I'm going to wrap this up now. Doing some work this afternoon, looking to you in the background. Phil, I'm very glad that you could have me in the background. Love your videos, especially the last series of solo driving. This is from Jiju. Loved you talking with sometimes the silence in the videos. Something very different. Nobody has done it before. No, yeah, I was wondering while I was doing that solo trip. I must tell you that I so enjoyed that solo trip. I would just set up the camera, and there's lots of footage of just me doing absolutely nothing. Well, the camera's actually running, and I thought, surely not. But I really did enjoy making that series. And excuse me, hugely therapeutic, those trips for me. And when I say those solo trips, and those of you who haven't seen the solo thing, it's actually available on YouTube right now. If you want to binge watch the whole lot, you can go in and support the channel by going into this link in this description. My Vimeo video on demand, and there's all kinds of stuff, lots and lots of stuff that I don't ask a lot for them, but you can download and binge watch my shoots in Botswana, in Angola, in the United States. I've got a whole lot of new stuff that I shot in the United States this year that's no longer not on YouTube yet. There's lots and lots of stuff if you guys want to binge watch my stuff. And I don't ask for a lot for it, but you can, and a lot of it's in 4K. So if you have a big TV screen at home, it looks pretty good. And I put it out there, the solo trip, and I just come home like with a buzz on, like I'm just like refreshed. And I come into my edit suite and I edit it all and put it all together, hoping that you guys will be entertained. A lot of my stuff is kind of cut for television. It's kind of quite pacey, and this definitely wasn't cut for television. And a lot of you guys really liked it, which is fantastic. I'm very pleased about that. What do I think about the new Mahindra Scorpio? I haven't driven the new Mahindra Scorpio, but I did drive the old one. In fact, I'm gonna find something and show it to you. All right, this here. Can you see that there? You see that very, very shiny Mahindra Scorpio. Now this book, of course, The Complete Guide to Four-Wheel Drive, is the book's been on sale now for about, it was on sale in hard copy like this in South Africa non-stop for 24 years. It went out of print in South Africa in 2000, I think it was 17. And this one with the Mahindra Scorpio, Mahindra came to me and said, please Andrew, we want to go onto the cover of your book. And we would print 8,000 of these at a time and sell them through the year. So we'd sell a little bit of advertising. There's an advertisement there. That's a Porsche Cayenne advertisement. And the back of it, there's a Subaru Forester advertisement on the back of it. And we sell a bit of advertising. Not a lot, but it would help. And then we would produce the book. And it's all. And this book, version of this book is exactly like this, full color, is available from my shop. You can download it or order it in hard copy. or download a $5 or something. It's not a lot. But the story behind the Mahindra, they came to me and they said, we want to go on the cover. And I said, well, if you want a vehicle on the cover, it's going to cost you some money. So, for example, this one was a Toyota. We didn't get anything for that. We got nothing for that Toyota. We got some money for... This is another story. So that Ford. Okay, so I'm going to tell you some stories about my books. So Ford, that's a story. Not a good cover for a book. Okay, not a good cover for a book. Okay, you'd think that would be a good cover for a book. Trouble is, it's a Mahindra. Now, the best of all the books that I produced a version of this book for the UK market, and that is the best front cover I ever produced. With a lovely Series 2 Land Rover, and I love that. Okay, best one. And only we did get some couple of that one I did especially for Toyota when they launched the 100 series. We actually did a book specially for them, and basically it was a book about trails and four-wheel drives, but it only had pictures of Toyotas in it and didn't have a what four-wheel drive to buy chapter in it because it was Toyota. So Land Rover, I think, gave us some money for that, if I remember correctly. Not sure. I remember very clearly that photograph. This is my guidebook. So I have guidebooks and I have trails books. So that's a trails book, and it's a guidebook. And the lighting in here is not terribly good for this kind of thing, but anyway, you can have a look at it. And we got some money from Mitsubishi for that one. And but back to the Mahindra. They said, we really want to cover on your book. Now we would print 8,000 at a time, and we would print in the first part of the year. The books would be released, I seem to remember, in about January, so each one had a date on it, and we would be sold out by November. They would all be sold out, or was probably actually not that. It was probably we got the new books in November for Christmas, and then they would be. But basically, they'd last us 10 to 11 months. We would be selling books, and then they would run out, and that would be absolutely ideal because by the time they're running out, the next one is being printed at the printer. This was the only book we ever printed. We did not sell all 8,000. There was about 1,000 left. We didn't sell because of the Mahindra. So the money we got for that, we didn't make a cent out of it because we sold 1,000 or so less books, fewer books. And the best-selling book was this one, was a trails book. There's a four-wheel drive trails book. This is our best ever selling book. We sold 15,000 of these. We actually, in the middle of the year, had to make another print run. Our most successful book, and that was our last trails book because it was too expensive to update the information because it meant actually going out and doing the trails. I wouldn't just write from other books. I would actually go and do these trails and photograph the trails. It was just too expensive. It just got hideously expensive. I have actually lost the edition. I had it, and I can't find it, and I don't know where it is. It's a bit worrying. My very, very first book, I had two copies. I only had 2 copies, and I gave one of them to Sheikh Hamad when I met him in 2019. I gave him a gift. I gave him a gift of my very first book and my very final printed book, and I had one for myself left, and it's disappeared. And the other story I wanted to tell you was this one here. I did a Afrikaans translated version. So those of you who's in South Africa would appreciate the fact that there, and I seem to remember Toyota gave me some money for that too. That's quite a nice cover. And it was a failure because even the bookstores in the most Afrikaans part of the country, being Bloemfontein, wouldn't buy it. So that was another one. We had excess stock, and we printed 5,000 of those. I think we only sold about 2,500. So that was not successful. And last one I wanted to mention was this guy here. So there's a book that we did for Toyota. We did that specially for Toyota, and that read 90 Land Cruiser 90. Next time I do this, I'll get some lights and actually be able to show you a little better. That was the vehicle that I actually was had it for a year. It was loaned to me by Toyota South Africa, and that was a trails book we did specially for Toyota, and it was sold through their dealerships. And of course, right at the top there, you can see the badge that says Infomap. Right up there, the Infomap. That was my mapping business. And so there you go. Then you have all the books that. So as I said, if you're interested in getting yourself a copy of these books, there's only one edition that is currently available. It's available on Amazon for download, or you can order yourself a hard copy, and they are available right now. Last thing, I'm just going to go through and see if there's any. Hello, Renee. I think some of you guys are tiring now. We're down to 186 people. Well, thank you all very, very much for it's coming up to 2 hours. Andrew, would you ever do a video in 8mm film? No, I'm shooting 4K. I did 8mm film. You've seen some of my stories about sailing and some of my very, very early Range Rover stuff. That was shot on Super 8 film. So no, I don't think so. I'm more interested in driving really old vehicles and filming them with really nice cameras than the other way around. Dacia Duster. No thoughts on the Dacia Duster. One vehicle that I would like to mention is the Mitsubishi Delica. That is such an interesting vehicle. It was designed. It was the base. The chassis is basically the, if I'm correct, the second generation Pajero, which was an outstanding chassis. I did test driving for Mitsubishi. They were shooting a advert for that car, second generation, and they got hold of me. They'd seen my book was for sale, so I was quite well known in the country, and I spent 3 days driving this Mitsubishi at high speed. They want really high speed gravel and high speed tar. And I remember the high speed tar was doing 170 kilometers an hour with the thing in four-wheel drive. So I would engage the center differential. I would engage the center transmission. So remember that had Super Select, so it has two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive center locked. So I would just put it in four-wheel drive. And it was then that I formed my opinion of the Super Select. The Super Select, Mitsubishi Super Select, is a marketing gimmick, because the vehicle, it's a very good vehicle. The vehicle in four-wheel drive is phenomenal. The vehicle in two-wheel drive is ordinary. Why would you have a lever inside the cab to convert the car from phenomenal to ordinary? The four-wheel drive uses no extra fuel. There was a time with that I mentioned John Rich. John Rich was driving, was doing a film shoot in Zambia, and they were sponsored a whole lot of Pajeros. Later, I think he had the third generation Pajeros. And I was chatting to him, and I said, do me a favor, you're doing all this driving. And I said, won't you do sections in four-wheel drive and section in two-wheel drive for me? And I need to find out what is the difference in fuel consumption. If you can just somehow, do that leg in two-wheel drive and do the reverse in four, and then go back in four and then come back in two, and just make a few notes and see if you can measure any difference. And he was there for weeks driving this vehicle, for driving film crew people. And I said, anything? And he said, no difference, none, zero, impossible to tell. It was consistent. Fuel consumption was absolutely consistent all the time. So why would you want to put the vehicle, reduce safety, increase tire wear, because now it's two driving wheels instead of four, and affect the handling negatively, just so you can say that you can put it in two-wheel drive. There is no advantage to that car in two-wheel drive. None. Where would you have, and I'm talking, of course, with a center differential unlocked, and you lock it, there's a switch, click, electrical locker, center locker. And I did several trips in the second generation Pajero. Very, very impressive car. Very poor axle wheel travel. So driving it wasn't as good off-road, say, than Prado, the same era. But it was a little bit on-road than Prado. But it was just a good car. The Leica had the same underpinnings, exactly the same underpinnings, in a van. Brilliant. Really, really good. I've never owned one. In fact, I've never driven the Leica. But what a fantastic idea. The new Delica looks even more interesting. But of course, we don't get the new Delica in Australia. I wish we would, actually, because that would be a really interesting car. So, but I think the third and fourth generation Pajero is it's a poor vehicle. I don't think it's a good vehicle. I think it's a bad vehicle, but I don't think it's a good vehicle. The Prado is much better. In every respect, the Prado is better. 1989 Toyota Hilux Raider. Tristan, that was the one I told earlier in the show about that I had. It was about a 1989, 1994, 95, something like that. Toyota Hilux Raider. And I nearly had a really, really bad off-road accident in it. That was the one. Not sure where in the world you are, Don. I am in Perth, Western Australia, but I'd certainly try and find a factory-locked as rust-free. Oh, he's talking to somebody else. He was talking to somebody else. What would be your worst nightmare four-wheel drive? What would be my worst nightmare four-wheel drive? I don't know. One that broke down when I was all on my own, loving my solitude and having a good time, and the car broke down. That would be horrible. A lot of people, my vote is for the Unimog 404. I don't know what it is about you guys who love the Unimog. I don't understand it. Yes, I know they got the portals and they got so much clearance and all the thing, but they're so big and heavy and slow and cumbersome, and actually not terribly practical. And if you take them to extremes, they're amazing. But actually, hill climbs and things like that, they're not actually that good. How do you live with? How do you change a tire that is this big and weighs so much that two people can't pick it up? How do you practically use it? And I might be talking out of turn because I've never overlanded with the Mog, and I have seen them. I've driven the Mog. They're fantastic fun to drive. I drove one earlier this year. Enormous fun to drive. And entertaining as you can get when it comes to a four-wheel drive. But, right, it is midnight here in Perth, and it's 2:30 a.m. Where are you, Renee? I don't know where you are. You are East Coast. I am going to say goodnight to everybody now, and I thank you very much for... I had a bad accident in a four-wheel drive mine a few days after I got it. That's not so much fun. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. Those guys who went into SuperChat to donate a little bit to the channel, every little bit helps. We really appreciate it. And what we've coming up on the channel this week, I do a live every month. I do a live show. And of course, those of you not watching or listening to the podcast, the Next Journey podcast, we've got some fascinating stories. One I recorded yesterday, it's not live, it'll be live in about 3 weeks' time, was an old chum of mine, actually, an ocean sailor whose boat broke in the Pacific, and his family's 8 people on board, his family on board, him and his wife and 6 kids, survived. Harrowing story, fantastically told, with my friend Charles, and we've got lots of wonderful and interesting subjects on the Next Journey podcast. So, and the podcast, of course, is on this channel, on the alternative channel, the Next Journey, as well as on Spotify, Apple, and things like that. And coming up, if you're interested on the Overland Workshop, Gwyn has just released her course the 365-day Nomad's Pantry. It's all about how we handle food when we're overland, and it's a fascinating insight into storing, preparing, carrying food, pre-preparing food, cooking food. When we're on a trip somewhere, we don't take we don't take, for example, we don't take tomatoes and onions and mushrooms. Why? We hydrate them first, and we have fantastic food, and it's light, it's compact. You can carry twice as much, 3 times as much for a quarter of the weight, and all you need to do is put them in a little bit of water, and in 10 minutes time that you get these. In fact, tomatoes actually taste better doing it this way, and that kind of stuff. She talks about that. It's not just that. It's a lot of, it's a 25 or something lectures about it. That's available now on the Overland Workshop. Those of you who are subscribers to Overland Workshop, go in now. It's ready for you. Just go in now and watch the. And those of you who would like to buy it separately, you can. But of course, subscription, you'll get all 9 courses that are currently available on the Overland Workshop. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody now, all over the world. Thank you. Nothing but love for you and your work, Andrew. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, guys. Really appreciate your insights and your humor. I do appreciate that very much. I've actually enjoyed tonight very much. I'm going to go to bed now. Good night. Sleep well. Be safe.